Hey, it is Friday, August 7th. Recording on a different day this week because Paul and I are in Las Vegas. We're live from the West End right before we head over to LVCC for DEF CON. So we wanted to sneak in a podcast and an episode so we could talk about three things that have happened in the last week. But before we get there, Paul, what are your kind of impressions so far? We've been here since Sunday. We did Las Vegas. Besides Las Vegas, we did Black Hat, obviously starting on DEF CON. Lots of events, lots of people to see. What's your takeaway so far?
AppSec buyers are very different than SecOps buyers. I think that my takeaway is that the industry is waking up to the reality that software supply chain attacks are real and present and are danger. But I think a lot of people still don't really understand how it works. And I guess that's why we're here, right? That's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, fair enough. So unfortunately, predictably on Tuesday, Tuesday, we all collectively woke up to a new NPM worm. We kind of figured after the success that Team PCP had during, hacker spring break, whatever you want to call the set of things in San Francisco back in March, that we figured an attacker would try to pull the same thing this week. So pros and cons. On the positive side, this thing didn't go as crazy. There's some scuttlebutt that the attackers didn't quite do things in the most complete and high quality way. But on the negative side, over 400 packages were affected by this worm. We've been in communication with the person who, as far as we can tell, was the patient zero, Jared Wray, who maintains, I don't know if it's Keyv or Cave, I don't know how you pronounce it, and cacheable, but he maintains a couple of projects. His account was taken over on Tuesday. He was locked out for at least, it seems like maybe 12 hours while threat actors published the worm, and then it made it into other parts of the ecosystem. What do you think is notable here?
Well, I think the first thing that's notable is that while you're right that the threat actor in this case, we don't believe that this is a highly competent threat actor, to choose my words carefully. But that said, my point I'm driving at here is that even though this is not a highly competent threat actor, at the same time, this was still unfortunately a very successful attack in the sense that it infected a lot of packages, had a lot of reach. Jared's packages alone, I downloaded a lot. So it just goes to show you that even if somebody fumbles the hand grenade, it's still pretty freaking dangerous.
Yeah, there's one particular ecosystem that just got decimated by this company. A service called ServiceTitan had 100 packages compromised. I don't know if that's all of their packages, but that's certainly a lot of packages, and that seems to be the biggest single impact that we're seeing with this attack.
Yeah, we also heard some inside baseball that this might be related to a long-lived legacy pat. We haven't verified that yet, but if that's the case, just goes to show you, how dangerous this is.
Poor Paul has been hit with a cold this week. It's not the security plague that might catch us off guard, but kind of while he's recovering. Just in brief, what the malware did is it contains an obfuscated JavaScript payload, and it has either a math_init.js or math_symbol.js file. They both have the same payload. It's roughly the same file hashes. And what it does is it searches your dev machines, your CI runners for credentials. Surprise. It's looking for GitHub, NPM, AWS, Kubernetes Vault, Azure, Google Cloud, Terraform, Docker, Slack, pretty diverse kind of infrastructure related credentials. It exfiltrates what it finds. what we know so far is it's based off the open sourced Mini Shai-Hulud worm that came out in April, May timeframe. And it, let's see here, it does use the GitHub dead drop in the same way that we saw Shai-Hulud do last year. Hey man, do me a favor and mute. We got an echo chamber. Sorry, everyone. We're sitting across the table from each other. It gets a little funky sometimes. But yeah, they've got GitHub dead drop. They have a primary way of exfilling as well. I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is one that ran on a pre-install or post-install script, right?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
I don't know how deep we need to get into it, but the thing that I think is worth having a little bit more of a conversation about is just last week we were talking about GitHub's new announcement where they said that they would be proactively scanning packages pre-publication looking for malware. And this was found by several security researchers within minutes of it being published. This was not complicated sneaky malware. And so that means, I guess, one of two things. Either the pre-publication scanning is not turned on or it's not tuned to find this kind of malware. So just kind of a reminder that just because they say it's turned on doesn't mean it's going to be immediately preventing these kind of exploits. Paul, I'm sure you agree.
Yes, I do. I think that's a great segue to one of the other two things we want to talk about today. Keeping this
the massive thing, yeah.
The pre-publishing, scanning that supposedly is being turned on, and my understanding, Jen, is that it's being rolled out gradually. But that's also kind of ignoring the fact that we know that this has been in place for months or a year or more. So they've been using the Microsoft scanning inside of NPM for a while now, and so to say this new. So, and yet it's not catching all these big things that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, so big thing number two, which I would say is a bit under the radar because it's not a worm, it's not an account compromise, is yesterday morning, you discovered a massive new campaign that is publishing just hundreds of packages to NPM. In the last now 72 hours, we've discovered over 1,000 malicious packages pushed to NPM. I'll drop the link to the analysis that we put up yesterday morning. You're calling this the well dropper campaign or well dropper malware. There's a couple of things that are notable about it. One is, again, clearly not getting blocked by anything that's coming through on NPM. Two, as far as we can tell, attribution looks like Russian threat actors. We talked about a campaign called Moika a couple months ago. There's reason to believe it may be the same threat actor. We don't see as much Russian malicious open source as we do things out of North Korea, obviously. And then the third thing that I think is, well, I guess there's a third and a fourth. The third thing I was going to bring up is this does not take advantage of install scripts, post-install, anything like that. So if you're kind of thinking, oh, well, if I just turn off NPM like lifecycle scripts, I'll be safe. This campaign doesn't take advantage of that. And then the final thing I'll say is many of these look to be a very specific type of typo squat, which is an AI slop squat. Say that 5 times fast. So yeah, the thing that to like kind of dig in there is more and more we're seeing malware that's targeting agents, not humans. And these are much like other typo squats, they're forks of benign projects that have been poisoned in some way. Though interestingly, in at least one case that you looked at, Paul, you found that it didn't actually do the thing that it claimed to do. So it was both a slop squat and I don't know, not a very good package. What do you want to say about this well dropper campaign?
Helps if I go off mute. Yeah, I mean, I think that the well dropper thing is I think people are probably lumping it into the kind of spam junk category, like Indonesian foods. But in this case, the payload is actually very dangerous. And so there's a couple things I want to talk about here. We've loosely attributed this to Russian threat actors because they're using their backup stage 2 is being pulled. There's a backup function that will pull the stage 2 from text records from a .ru domain. Now, I thought that .ru domains, you couldn't buy those in the West, but you still can buy them until September 1st, 2026. So, and some people have said, some other researchers on Twitter have said that, they're trying to make it look like it's Russian. And I agree, it kind of feels like that. But at the same time, this has some signals and some similarities to another campaign that we saw, Moika. That I personally genuinely believe that Moika is a real Russian campaign for a number of reasons. Some of which I can go into and some of which I can't. But I guess the point is, just because somebody uses .ru domains right now, at least, doesn't mean that it's officially attributed to Russian threat actors. There were no Cyrillic characters in any of these packages. And this is the weird thing, is that they're targeting mostly Russian and Belarusian financial organizations. So like if you're a Russian threat actor, why would you do that? Because that's a death sentence in Russia. But here's the other thing, is it also has, like one of them I was looking at had the CIS checks, right? So it's looking, am I running in Russia? So why would you be targeting Russian, financial institutions if you also have the CIS block there? So it's a confusing thing. But in the meantime, this thing is pummeling NPM. At one point, I saw one package per 51 seconds. So, and each one of those, almost every single one, it has its own email address. So just the mass, the automation that these threat actors are using to create this stuff. And NPM does not have any response. Most of these are being tagged by OSV and us, and and being labeled that way. So I don't know where this pre-published scanning is, guys. Come at me.
Okay. Next topic is something that we actually published Saturday, I think, right as I think you were mid-flights on your way out to the US. I was, packing my bags. You made a discovery about some new technique that North Korea's Lazarus group is using, or at least it looks like it's Lazarus group, but it certainly is North Korea. You've named this technique null receiver. It's a new way for hiding a C2 IP address inside the recipient of a completely empty Ethereum transfer. And, if you're more used to the application security side of this, of like, yes, no, is this package bad? You may not know a lot about C2, but essentially, once the malware fires, the threat actors have to have a way to get your stuff out of your environment, whether it's, via rat or something else. They have to have a way to come in and talk to your machine. And they have been using Ethereum. They've been using blockchain technology to do this for at least, is it 2 years now that it's been observed? Maybe a little, I don't know. You're on mute, man.
Trying to do the needful. No, I think Ether hiding has been around for a year, but you're right. Some of the earlier Ethereum stuff goes back, I think, to late 2024.
Yeah, I feel like it's somewhere in there. So, kind of what is Ether hiding? Why would North Korea be doing this innovation? So Ether hiding is a technique that works by sending a transaction to Ethereum's burn address. And they embed the secrets, such as like a C2 URL or even a malicious script, inside that transaction's data field. And the destination itself is meaningless. The data field's what matter. And this has been really highly successful at evading detection from your EDR, whatever threat detections you have set up, because it looks legit, and it where it says it's going is not necessarily where it's going. It's the memo field, I believe. But ether hiding has some weaknesses. It reuses the same fixed public burn address across every campaign, and that makes it much easier for us, thank you, to watch it. That's how GTI caught it. That if you monitor that burn address and then flag anything unusual sent there, that's kind of the hack, so to speak, to be able to manage it in your detections. Also, it's slightly more expensive. So, Paul, talk about what you discovered with null receiver and why it's able to get around kind of the drawbacks of ether hiding. And I'll say we've discovered 10 packages that are using this new technique. We're linking it kind of softly to the contagious interview campaign. There's enough overlap there that it looks like it's part of that particular MO. So yeah, lay it on us. What's interesting here?
Yeah. So in typical ether hiding, what makes it unwieldy over time is that you use the same blockchain address. And so this set of blockchain addresses, we've been watching these things now for like a year and a half or 2 years, and they've been used across. And this is one of the easy ways that you're able to attribute this to North Korea is that they used it in some of the early LinkedIn stuff, and they used it in Task Tracker, and now they're using it in other places too as well. But the problem there is that, like you said, they're using specific blockchains. They're using Tron and Aptos to do the Binance BSC thing. I still don't understand that one, but anyhow, those three blockchains have these memo fields. So what you enter into the blockchain address itself, is immutable. You can't change it, right? That's how the blockchain works. But these memo fields allow you to change it. Now, the problem, though, is that it singularly kind of pivots on that known that Tron address or the Aptos, and everybody and their brother is looking for those. Everybody and their brother and their sister, you want to be gender non-specific here, are looking for those addresses. So DPRK probably was sitting there in their Friday hackathons and thinking, how can we do this in a more lean way where we can change the blockchain address? They came up with this really unique technique, which is basically what they do is they take a specific Ethereum address and they can change it. They can change it up if they want to. And basically what they then do is they send a transaction of zero anything to it. So they spend a little tiny bit on gas. I think that's how this works. I'm not a crypto guy, not pretending to be one. But they don't have to actually send any money to it. And the destination that they're sending that to doesn't exist, right? It's not, you can't send stuff to that destination. But instead, in that address, they're hiding, there's not a lot of characters there. So they can hide an IP address or a short URL, or maybe a very short like curl to a redirection string, one of those like short.gys or something like that. They can't put a lot of stuff there. But what makes this really great then is they put that in stage 2 in front of ether hiding. So we've already seen this. Where, and a couple of people asked me on Twitter, how am I attributing this to DPRK? Well, basically just take the standard 6-stage DPRK kill chain with invisible ferret and all the other stuff, and they're just slotting in now at stage 2 null receiver. And they still have, in some cases, they still are using ether hiding at stage 3 and 4, right? So it's and ether hiding is still calling the original Tron one, so they're just hiding it at the beginning of the kill chain. So anyhow, that's me going into depth about how we know it's TPRK and we can connect it to a lot of activity, because in those cases where they are using ether hiding, we can just point at all those other things, hundreds and hundreds of packages that use it. So I'll pause there. The cough drop worked.
Good, excellent. That's kind of the majority of what we had to talk about today. I don't know that we'll go the full even like half hour that we've been doing, but I want to talk about something you and I got to do yesterday that I thought was kind of special. Our friend Mackenzie over at Aikido fired up an email, a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, a whole bunch of us that work in the malware security research space are going to be in Vegas. Let's all film a podcast together. And so we got together yesterday afternoon with Mac, as well as John from Aikido, who was the CEO of Root, which was acquired recently. Also in the room, we had Step Security, we had Ox Security, and Socket. So we're a little bit separate from those types of vendors, but certainly they're all direct competitors. And so I thought that was pretty special. We got to get together and have like a real conversation about what's problematic in the industry right now, what the challenges are, in what ways vendors are making things better and honestly worse in some ways, and what maybe we can be doing collectively. So I just thought it was such a great example of like community and the value of getting out of our basements. My basement, your shed, and cottage. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, excuse me. And just getting out and like seeing the people, because this is it's a big world, but also it's really small, and I don't think any of us would be successful if we didn't have the connections and relationships. So anyway, that all is a teaser for Mac's podcast episode of the Secure Disclosure that's going to have a record-setting, I think, 6 guests on it. It should be pretty fun.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, I don't have anything really to add. I just want to say thanks again to Mackenzie and to Aikido for putting it together, and to Socket and Step and Ops for being a part of it. I think this is the kind of thing that we need to do more. And I think all of us in the room yesterday agreed that we need to do more of this, right? We need to have this kind of relationship where we're not just trying to compete against each other. Are we competing? Of course we are, right? But at the same time, well, us not so much, but at the same time, it's important for us all to be part of this community. So big shout out to them.
Yeah, and like the necessity for a collaborative relationship is never more clear than when you and I have these conversations about, hey, we just found 1,000 new malicious packages that are hanging out in NPM. What can we collectively do to try to get them taken down? We were talking about the situation with the NPM worm, and ourselves included, multiple vendors, reached out and tried to help this guy because, the person who was compromised is not a security person. He doesn't have the support of a big company. A lot of times they're a little bit like, what do I do? Oh no, this thing that I've, built and taken responsibility for has gotten taken away. And, unfortunately, in, the case of the person who was compromised, they weren't getting help from more official channels.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate, and we've been seeing this, and we talked about it on the podcast before. But I really think it's incumbent on GitHub and GitHub to come up with a better response plan than locking out. And I get, especially when the GitHub repository is sitting behind the NPM packages are also potentially malicious. I get that locking them out to some extent makes sense. But at the same time, what we then create is we create the situation where the maintainer themselves can't be a part of the fix, right? And so then there's a lot of latency while these offshore emails go backwards and forwards with the maintainer. So I'm reaching out to GitHub. We talked to a few people from GitHub last night and saying, this is a problem, and we need to have a better, incident response plan here from the GitHub side, straight up.
For sure. Well, again, we're taking off for DEF CON here. We've got a workshop today, a panel later today, a talk tomorrow. And then we're out of here because 8 days in the desert is possibly 8 days too many. It's a lot, but we've had a great week.
Yeah, I love this week. I'm desiccated, but as I'm sure everybody else is. But just want to say thanks everybody for listening. And we've had a lot of people come up to us this week and say they really like the podcast. They really like the content that we put out there. We do this because we really love doing it. Jen and I are doing this right now because we really love doing this, and it means a lot when people do that. So just want to say to those people that came up and met us, thanks so much. That really makes us feel good. Thank you.
Yeah, +1 to that. Keeps us going, makes us feel like we're not just talking to each other here in a hotel lobby. That we're doing some good. So with that said, if you're in Vegas, hope you're having a great time. If you're not, it's okay. You may have some FOMO, but there's lots going on. So we'll see you next time.
See ya.